Friday. Thank you for tuning in. You're here with me, Bex, on the wonderful Good Friday. Although it sounds a little bit weird saying Good Friday, because actually it's the day that Christians remember when Jesus died. So today we're going to be exploring why today is a good thing, is a good thing to remember. So let's have a recap. For those of you who have and who haven't been joining us on this Gateway Kids journey, we're going to rewind our memories to last Sunday. And that was Palm Sunday. So that was only a few days ago. And that was when we learned about Jesus. We looked at him meeting Zacchaeus, the man who was really tiny, who climbed a tree to meet with Jesus. And we also looked at when Jesus entered the city of Jerusalem. So he entered by riding on a donkey, a colt. So a donkey that had never been ridden before. And people were so happy to see Jesus. They were shouting his name. They were singing Hosanna. They were taking off their coats and laying it on the floor. And they were picking palm leaves and laying them on the floor for Jesus. They were excited to see him. But unfortunately, the story does not end there. Because although quite a lot of people who lived in Jerusalem were happy because Jesus was there, some of the important people, the people in the council and the high up people, weren't a big fan of Jesus. When he walked past, they were like, what's Jesus doing here? They weren't pleased because they were jealous. Jesus was getting all this attention, was being glorified, and they were getting all like, why is no one giving me attention? They were getting grumpy and miserable. So they had a thought, how can we stop this Jesus? We don't like him. So they decided that they wanted to find out more about Jesus. So they went up to one of Jesus' special friends, one of his disciples, and said, Judas, come here. Right, Judas, let's make a little deal. You tell us about Jesus. You tell us, where he is, what he's doing, keeps updated, and in return we'll give you some money. Judas had a little think and was like, yeah, all right, I'll do that. But the important people just wanted to know where Jesus was so that they could arrest him. So the day before Good Friday, so last night, we remember a special meal that Jesus had with his special friends, with his disciples. And that meal is called the Passover meal. So Jesus and his disciples all gathered together. During this time, Jesus broke bread. And he shared the bread around and he said, eat this in remembrance of my body. And then he poured some wine and he said, drink this in remembrance of my blood. During this meal, he told all his followers that one of them had turned against him. In addition to this, Jesus also went up to one of the disciples named Peter and told him, before the cockerel crows in the morning, you'd have denied me. You would have said, oh no, I don't know this Jesus. Don't know who you're on about. After they'd eaten, Jesus and some of his followers went to the Garden of Gethsemane. Whilst they were there, Jesus was praying, and some of the disciples fell asleep. But it's during this time, Judas went and told the important people where Jesus was. So when Jesus was praying, some guards came and they arrested him. They took him away. Peter, the disciple that Jesus had spoken to at the meal, decided to follow. Just like Jesus had told him. When some people nearby saw Peter, they asked if he was Jesus' friend. But Peter quickly was like, no, this Jesus? No, I'm not one of his friends. I don't know him. He lied. And it was then that the cockerel crowed. Peter remembered what Jesus had said to him at the meal and felt so sad and disappointed. Pilate, one of the important people of the time, decided to let the people vote. Because it was a time of Passover, he said, I will set one of the captives free. We can either set Jesus free, or we can let a man named Barabbas free. Now, Barabbas was really naughty and really sinful. He'd hurt a lot of people in the community. But some of the important people were in the crowd, and they started cheering, Barabbas, Barabbas, Barabbas. They wanted Barabbas set free instead of Jesus. So like Pilate had said, he set Barabbas free, just as the people had asked for, meaning that Jesus was going to be put on a cross. The guards were really mean and horrible to Jesus. They beat him up, they spat at him, they tore his clothes off and gave him a robe and made fun of him. Ha ha ha, look at that king, look at that king. They even made a horrible thorn of crowns which cut Jesus' head. After they had done this, they made Jesus carry a heavy cross up to a place called the skull. This is where they done the crucifixions, so when they killed people by putting them on the cross. Jesus was so weak and so beaten that one of the crowd members actually carried the cross some of the way for him. And there were lots of people following and crying out because they were mourning, they were upset by what was going to happen to Jesus. Jesus was placed on a cross in between two criminals. The other two men either side of him had been really sinful, had done lots of bad things in their lives. But Jesus had never sinned. Jesus had never done anything wrong. The guards continued to make fun of Jesus and made a sign above his head that read, "This is the King of the Jews." Whilst hanging on the cross, Jesus spoke to his Father God, and said, "Oh Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing." Some of the important people who were watching in the crowd laughed at Jesus. They pointed at Jesus. They made fun of Jesus and told him, "Well, if you really are the Son of God, just hop off that cross." But people who knew Jesus and people who loved Jesus were so upset and were crying out for him. At about noon, darkness came over the sky, and Jesus took his last breath. At that time, the temple had a really thick, heavy curtain, and it was like impossible to move by yourself. It was so heavy. But as Jesus took his last breath, that curtain tore right down the middle in two. One of the guards who were watching Jesus stood there amazed and spoke and declared that Jesus was really who he said he was. After Jesus had died, a man named Joseph went to Pilate and asked for Jesus' body, which Pilate allowed. So he wrapped his body in a cloth and put him in a tomb, which was dug out in a cave. And they rolled a really heavy stone over it so no one could get in and out. Now that story isn't one of the nice, happy stories in the Bible, because it's a sad thing. Jesus died, people were mean to Jesus, and they put him on the cross. But the reason that we can be happy about this is because Jesus died for you and for me. For God so loved the world that he sent Jesus to it to show people and tell people about him, and that those who believe in him will not have to die to their sin. They won't have to take the punishment for the bad things they do, but instead can have eternal life with God. What a blessing. All the things that you do wrong, all the naughty things you say, all the naughty things you do, none of that can stop Jesus from loving you. There is no sin too big or too small that Jesus can't forgive you of. And he loves you. Because of Jesus dying on the cross, we can now be friends with the creator of the universe. But the story doesn't end there. Jesus didn't stay in the grave. He didn't stay dead. And that is why we can celebrate. So to help us remember what Jesus did for us and the fact that he died on the cross, we are going to be making Easter gardens. So over the next few minutes, I'm going to be explaining how I made mine.
So first things first, I gathered up my equipment. There is my compost and my pot. I had to cover some little holes so the rain and water wouldn't come out. I had string, sellotape, pair of scissors to cut the string. I found some weeds in the garden, but I think they look quite pretty, and some stones. Got some more soil, and also got a device to dig the soil. Got my sticks for my crosses, so that they can fit together. So I've got enough to make the 3 crosses. I've also got a stone for the rock that covers the tomb and a tomb. So I am starting with the crosses first. So what I'm doing is cutting quite a long bit of string and positioning a smaller stick over the bigger stick and using a twisting method. I don't really think you can go wrong, but you just want it to be able to stay in place. So you want your string quite tight. So you may want an adult to help you, first of all when using the scissors, but also it's a bit fiddly with the string and holding the little stick in place. So this is me trying to work it out because I found it fiddly myself. But yeah, working out the best way that I can tie a knot and make sure that it is secure. So I just completed the process to complete 3 crosses and then I'd done that bit. So I quickly learned that the crosses wouldn't stand up. My garden wasn't deep enough without putting some stones around it, but I'd suggest it anyway. So poke them in where you want them and put some stones just around them to support them. Don't worry about the stones because we're going to cover it, or you can cover it with some more soil. You may want to leave it with the stones like that. It's up to you. I'd already decided where I wanted to put my tomb, so I put it in position and then started to pour soil over the areas to build it up, because I wanted my tomb to be like dug out of the cave. I've used a broken plant pot. The other pot that I found was a bit too big for everything else, so I went for something smaller. I then decided to add some more stones, so I wanted to put stones outside the entrance of my tomb, and I also decided that I wanted them around the tomb and a bit around the rest of the garden. Once I sorted out the stones, I then added my big rock to act as the tomb covering. I also used some weeds and planted them in my garden.
Here it is, my completed Easter garden. May look a little bit wet, it's because I gave it water, because the plants that I've used have all got roots. Little weeds, but they still have roots, and I think they look pretty. So this is my garden, all finished. So the important thing to do is make sure that your stone covers your tomb during this time. We're going to keep it, oh my goodness, we're going to keep it closed, and then we can open it up again on Sunday. So please tune in again on Sunday morning or whenever it is convenient for you to catch up on our Easter Sunday celebration together. So you may want to bring some flowers or things. I have got a plan for my Easter garden for Sunday. So I've already eyed up a few pretty flowers that I'm going to put to make it exciting and celebrate that Jesus has risen. So you might want to do the same. There's no pressure to do that. Please remember with your Easter gardens, there is no right or wrong. You can do it however you want or however your family wants to do it. Thank you for joining me. Look forward to seeing you Sunday. Stay safe. Bye.